Have you ever considered why punk rock music, with its raw, rebellious sound, resonated so deeply with the youth of the 1970s? The 70s were a time of change and unrest, both socially and politically. Economic uncertainty, civil rights movements, and the disillusionment of war painted the backdrop against which punk rock was born. Punk rock emerged as a loud, defiant response to the perceived excess and pretension of mainstream music. It was a rebellion, a musical revolution that refused to conform to conventional norms. It was the voice of the unheard, the disenchanted youth who felt suffocated by the status quo. Key bands like the Ramones and the Sex Pistols were among the pioneers of this genre. They encapsulated the spirit of punk, brazen, unapologetic, and raw. Their music was a battle cry, a call to arms for those who felt marginalized and unheard. Punk rock was more than just music, it was an attitude, a response to a society that many felt had lost its way. But how did a genre so defiant and countercultural manage to infiltrate the mainstream? Well, let's rewind to the late 70s and early 80s. This was a time when punk rock was beginning to gain momentum. It was raw, it was loud, and it was rebellious. Bands like The Clash and the Buzzcocks were at the forefront of this movement. They were unapologetically punk, yet they managed to achieve commercial success. How? By staying true to their punk ethos. They didn't sell out or compromise their sound to fit into the mainstream. Instead, they brought the mainstream to them. This was a time when punk wasn't just a genre, it was a lifestyle. It was about challenging the status quo and expressing oneself freely. It was about creating your own rules and not being afraid to break them. This raw energy and DIY ethos started to permeate through the music industry, influencing other genres and artists. Punk was no longer confined to dingy basement gigs and underground scenes. It was on radio stations, in record stores, and at the top of the charts. It was becoming a cultural phenomenon. But punk's rise to mainstream wasn't just about music. It was about the attitude, the spirit, and the desire to disrupt. Punk was more than just a genre, it was a mindset. It was a way of life. Punk had started as a rebellion, but it was quickly becoming a revolution. So where can we see the influence of punk rock in today's music scene? You might ask. Well, let's dive right in. Punk rock, known for its raw energy and rebellious spirit, didn't just fade away. Instead, it morphed, evolved, and influenced a host of subgenres. Post-punk, new wave, and pop-punk are all musical styles that grew directly out of punk rock's roots. Post-punk took the rawness of punk and added a dose of artistry and introspection. Bands like Joy Division and The Cure paved the way for a whole new wave of music that pushed boundaries and explored new sonic landscapes. New wave, on the other hand, incorporated elements of pop and electronic music, creating a more accessible sound that still carried the punk spirit. Artists like Blondie and the Police are prime examples of this genre. Pop-punk is another offshoot that blended punk's fast-paced, guitar-driven sound with catchy pop melodies. Bands like Green Day and Blink-182 have carried this genre into the mainstream, influencing countless artists along the way. But perhaps the most significant impact of punk rock is its do-it-yourself ethos. This DIY spirit has inspired countless musicians, providing them with the courage and conviction to go their own way, to create their own sound, to defy the mainstream, and carve out their own musical path. Punk rock may have started over 40 years ago, but its influence can still be felt in the music we listen to today. What then is the lasting legacy of punk rock, one might ask? Well, to sum it all up, punk rock was more than just a music genre that emerged in the late 70s. It was an explosive cultural phenomenon that challenged societal norms, questioned authority, and made raw, unfiltered emotion its anthem. It was this audacious spirit of punk that sparked a seismic shift in the music industry. Punk tore down the walls of musical pretension and made space for authenticity and raw power. It gave voice to a generation seeking to express their angst, their hopes, their fears, and their defiance. And today, the influence of punk can still be seen and felt in modern music. It's there in the emotional honesty of indie rock, the rebellious spirit of hip-hop, and even the raw energy of electronic music. Punk rock was and still is more than just a genre. It's a mindset, an attitude, and a powerful force of rebellion. Its legacy? Well, just look around you.